Welcome back to In Focus. Twitter has officially sued billionaire and Tesla CEO Elon Musk in hopes to enforce their original merger agreement. This after Musk announced he was terminating the Twitter buyout, citing transparency issues from the social media giant, most notably seeming to not disclose the number of fake accounts on their platform, which made Musk think that the $44 billion deal was sorely overpriced. He can now face a $1 billion breakup fee. Meanwhile, Disney is apparently not the happiest place on earth. Turns out forcing employees to get vaccinated against their will makes for a hostile work environment. 3 former employees of Disney have now spoken out against the company. They were put out of work because they wouldn't conform to the woke and tyrannical Disney Corporation requirements for the COVID-19 vaccination. So in response, the former employees have also filed a lawsuit of their own, saying that Disney put in augmented protocols for the unvaccinated employees even after lifting the vaccine mandate. It's hardly Disney's business to know an employee's personal reason for not getting vaccinated, but the workers had sought religious exemptions and they were not able to be granted one, making this a potentially case of religious discrimination. Joining me now with a legal perspective on all of this is criminal defense attorney and anchor at Law and Crime Network, Bob Bianchi. Bob, thank you so much for joining me. We've been covering the Elon Musk news as it's been coming out, and now the verdict is in. Twitter has officially sued him, trying to enforce the merger agreement. I've been saying Elon Musk is going to have a bit of an uphill battle on this because at the end of the day, he did sign on to this deal. What do you think? As a lawyer, what is your perspective on this? How do you think this could play out?
Yeah, so a contract is where there's an offer, there's an acceptance, there's consideration given, they call it under the law, which just means I give you this and you give me that. And then there's an expectation of performance unless there's a quote unquote material breach of that contract. So I kind of agree with you, Addison. I mean, unless this bot scenario was specifically listed in the contract, and whether a court deems it to be material breach is probably really thin in my mind. And there is a clause in the contract, from what I understand, because we haven't obviously seen the contract, that indicates that if he bails out, that there's a $1 billion payment that has to be made for that. So I understand exactly what Twitter is saying on top of this. They're basically saying there was a material breach by Elon Musk by not fulfilling the contract. Their stock prices dropped over 30-some-odd% as a result of him with the takeover, as well, of course, the market going down. And now he wants to get out of the deal, and that the idea of the bot issue is mere pretext for him not wanting to fulfill his obligations under the contract.
And Twitter is now claiming that Elon Musk didn't read a summary that they sent him of how they sample their bots and how they find that out. I know Musk was saying the amount of fake accounts on Twitter needed to be under 5%, and it's apparently, according to Musk and other claims, it's apparently much higher than that. When he asked for the information for the bots, Twitter apparently sent something to him, but Musk said that it was just kind of a guise, that they weren't actually showing the true information and actually revealing how many bots are really on the account. Could that be, how much do you think the particulars of that are going to matter in this lawsuit?
Like anything else, depending on what the contract reads, and unfortunately we don't have the factual information to make this assessment.
Right.
But if the contract reads that Twitter is responsible for giving him meaningful data as a condition for entering into the contract or fulfilling the contract, and factually, if that is proven, well, then Elon Musk is going to win that case in my mind. But if it becomes something that is nebulous or something that wasn't really clear, or that he's being over demanding, or it's beyond that which Twitter had agreed to give, then he's got problems with this.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how it plays out. I know you're a lawyer, Bob. I, as just a conservative talk show host, would love to see Twitter lose this lawsuit. It's not that I love Elon Musk. It's that I just don't like these woke oligarchs over at Twitter who have censored the duly elected president of the United States, who have kicked countless conservatives off their platform. I hope they pay, whether big or small. I'd like to see something slap them in the face. Now, I want to get to this, Bob. Former Disney employees, 3 of them, are suing Disney over their vaccine and mask requirements. They're citing religious beliefs that they're claiming violated. I know you've read this lawsuit. What do you make of it? Do they have a solid case here? Obviously, they're going up against a mammoth company, Disney, they've certainly have the best lawyers that money can buy. How do you think this will play out in the courts?
You know, Addison, this is very similar to like people's political opinions and versus what the legality of things can be. You know, it's funny. It's a business. It's a private business. And now we're talking about either state regulations or constitutional laws on that business and whether they'll be applicable to stop a business. We have to be careful. If we do it for this business, then we have to worry about when we're on the other end of the political spectrum when it happens for that business. So here's my evaluation. First of all, it's a pandemic. It's a private business. It's got a right to protect its employees and its customers. You may not agree with it, but that's the way it is. The question becomes when somebody now poses a constitutional issue, that is, in this case, their right to religious freedom, and that they have religious objections to it, at that point, the Disney cannot discriminate on them for their constitutional, prerogatives. However, under the law, it requires that Disney only afford reasonable accommodations. That's the term that's used. And if the people can't comply with those reasonable accommodations, then they can be removed as employees. What the employees in this lawsuit are saying is that Disney's quote unquote reasonable accommodations were so harsh that it prevented them from being able to either eat or drink while they were on their ship. So this again is going to come down to the facts as to which side is right. Disney arguing, look, we've honored it. We gave reasonable accommodations so that they wouldn't intermingle with other employees and as well as, guests at the facilities. Or was it over draconian and therefore essentially causing them to have to leave their positions because they claim they weren't able to breathe, they weren't able to eat, they weren't able to drink? Again, it'll come down as to what the facts are in this.
So the crux of it sounds like it is whether or not Disney's accommodations were reasonable or unreasonable. And from what these former employees are arguing, that would be very unreasonable if they weren't allowed to eat or drink on the clock. How much do you think that the efficacy of masks or vaccines will play a role in this at all, or do you strictly think that it will be about the accommodations?
I don't think the efficacy of masks and vaccines are going to come into play in this. I mean, first of all, there's enough reasonable debate that each side can come up with their positions. And ultimately, it's going to come up to what the corporate executives, you may believe in vaccines and masks, and you may not believe in vaccines and masks. That's not the issue here. The corporation is considered a person under the law. And since they're a person under the law, the corporation can have their own opinion with regard to it. It has to be reasonable. They can't violate a protected class or they can't violate a constitutional amendment. And if somebody opposes a constitutional issue like this, the only requirement they have is to give a reasonable accommodation.
Got it. Bob Bianchi from Law and Crime Network. Very insightful. Always love having you on here for the legal analysis. Really appreciate you joining the show this morning.
Thank you, Addison.